So first of all, how India sees the world and how rest of the world sees itself. The fundamental difference being, the rest of the world says that you are the body. The soul is just a vehicle. Only Bharat says that you are the soul and body is just a vehicle. What is the difference in this two thought process? The rest of the world believes in one life concept, whereas Bharat is talking about life cycles. So what is the difference between these two models when you look at your daily lifestyle? The rest of the world is focused on consumption patterns, whereas the Bharatiya way of living is more of a savings and a preservation concept. Because the belief is that we are going to come back to this planet again. Now, one is consumption driven and second is preservation driven thought process. Now, when you're on a hyper consumption model, you got this edge with a debt-based concept that you can take loans today, live your lifestyle. The loans can be paid out later. Now, what that literally translated in the world as you take more and more loans, today, the United States economy has 39 trillion of debts accumulated. If you look at their balance sheet, the asset side shows 6 trillion something in the asset, and then 39 trillion is the deficit right now. This is a debt-based lifestyle, where 27% of Americans have to buy vegetables on credit. That is the lifestyle that they are living. What happens with this lifestyle? A hyper-consumption-based lifestyle, debt-based model. And what's the difference with a savings-based lifestyle? What could be probably be the difference? The difference is that what we call as the real currency of the world, what I call as a Sanatan currency, which is gold. Gold is the only asset which has zero political risk, zero geopolitical risk, zero default risk, zero credit risk. Indians have more gold today than the entire central banks of the planet put together. So we Indians have the actual currency in hand, rest all is what we call as credit. Now with this debt-based lifestyle, when you mix a classroom to jobs model which was established by Britain all over its colonies, what is the outcome? You lost the birth rates. When you post women into jobs in their fertile years, combine that with a debt-based lifestyle format and the classroom to jobs formula, what you get is an America which has aged, a China which has aged, Russia which has aged, Koreans have lost their birth rates, the Japanese have lost the birth rates, the Europeans have lost the birth rates. This is what it results into, besides the hyper debt-based lifestyle. Now, to sustain this debt-based lifestyle, what are the gimmicks that you are going to play into? Takeover of governments, forced conversion, these are the tools, regime change, commandments-based lifestyle, because now you want to do othering. Othering in the sense, this is my special members group, that is the other special members group. I want all the resources for my group. So now I have made commandments. You are members, exclusive members to my group, and if you don't belong here, then I am going to have significantly different treatment with you, just by your existence into some another group. This is what religious-based commandments does, a blanket separation of treatment between believers and non-believers. Whereas you look at a Dharmic lifestyle, what happens? It is a science of individual seeking. You never do the concept of othering in dharma. It's a sustenance, self-sustenance lifestyle, self-sufficiency and a content life, because you do not have the frustration that you are not going to be born again. So you do not have that kind of anxiety and stress in your lifestyle. Next is, obviously, many of these religions were born into geographies where there was a lot of hardship. Okay? Desert climate, not a lot of abundance, whereas dharma had an abundance mindset. Even desert regions in Bharat did not have this kind of violent treatment of other religions or othering of other groups. Now, differentiated and disconnected institutions is what you get with this kind of a lifestyle, whereas you have an ancient Mandir ecosystem with which India was giving more than 27% of the world GDP to the world GDP all alone for 1800 years of the last 2000 years. Now what did these Mandirs do actually? Well, the first and the most important tool as a Mandir ecosystem was not just banking but also education. All the gurukuls were inside the Mandir campuses. What was the impact? The gurus were never supposed to take fees directly from the students. The community would sponsor the research and the education format for the entire community without anyone realizing who's paying the fees for it. What is the outcome? The students cannot show Adam Smith arrogance, neither they can show Karl Marx entitlement. क्योंकि जो पैसा प्रभु के चरणों में दिया गया है, उससे एजुकेशन फॉर्मेट पूरा स्पॉन्सर हो रहा है. So nobody knows who is involved in the transaction. This was the primary benefit of the Gurukul system. Second, what happens with this kind of a banking? Today, if you analyze Tirupati in South Bharat, there are generations of people in North India, even today, going and depositing a percentage of profit share from their business to Tirupati Bhagwan, because this was the only Mandir-based ecosystem banking with zero NPAs. Now these generations obviously do not know that some of their ancestors might have taken startup funding from the Tirupati Mandir. But then it is still a zero NPA banking because you are taking money from the Bhagwan. So this ancient Bharat model, which I call as the Sanatan economics model, works on a banking format where you are not being given loans for anything and everything and sponsoring misbehavior between people. So if you make a chart of United States or even for the world of the last 100 years, the divorce rates, the birth rates, and the money printing, you will be surprised to know it is after 1971 you will see a upward slope in the divorce rates, a downward slope in the birth rates, and upward slope in the money supply. So it is the excess of money which has caused people misbehaving with each other, and that is what has reached multiple percentage of divorce rates for the Western countries, and they have also lost the birth rates because this economic model wasn't at all sustainable. What happened in this model was, I am taking loans and doing my spending as much as I like. What happens with that is, what does a loan mean? It means you are passing on the liability to the next generation, but then you don't want to give birth to the next generation. How does that financial model survive? So they opened up their borders. Europe opened up their borders. US also opened up their borders from the south. Choicest radicals have now entered into Europe, and we are expecting crusades to happen from 2031 because of this lot of illegal radicals that have entered. Now you understand the importance of a savings-based lifestyle, a currency which has some linkage with gold so that you don't misbehave with each other. Now imagine that kind of banking where people would say that, oh well, last mile banking has happened in my country, I've achieved something. Now a 5 rupee water bottle becomes 20 rupees water bottle, and 15 rupees is your loan. This is what happens with excess money supply. This is how people misbehave with each other with the excess of money supply. This is exactly how divorce rates shot up in the West. And this is exactly how they lost the birth rates. So a lot of things we need to derive from the ancient Bharat banking principles, wherein you might give low rate of interest rate loans to youngsters to start their entrepreneurship or self-employment. But we need to somewhere cap loans which are being disbursed recklessly for lavish spending, because that is how misbehavior happens in families, and that is how a country which has lost track of who their mothers are, those kind of economies can never be fixed. So we have to understand how important the Sanatan economics model had this importance of a family-based unit economics. For example, when Adam Smith came with his model of capitalism, he said, I'm going to give you benefits of economies of scale and division of labor. What happens? 14 families designing 14 types of shirts, they have to wrap up their business. Only one design remains in the market. Adam Smith puts up a factory. You pass on all your savings to that guy, and then you become his jobber. What happens in this economies of scale? 95% of wealth goes into the hands of 5% people. And once that kind of exploitation happens, Karl Marx is born. So we are youngsters, taxpayers are very sad when a politician comes and says, I'm going to distribute water for free, electricity for free. You don't like it. But then you got to realize that you first allowed the society to be exploited to a point where everybody now is just a jobber. Where 95% of wealth went into the hands of 5% people. After that exploitation, Karl Marx is born and is asking things for free. So this was a society, ancient Bharat was a society where before invaders came in, Indian normal citizen women were dominating 3 industry sectors worldwide: textiles, spices and jewelry. The entire world was ready to pay whatever an Indian woman would quote for these items. So we got to understand that the more and more we go to a classroom to job model, the more and more perpetually low innovation society that we are going to become. Because a salaried person do not have any incentive to do any kind of an original research. He would say the research and development department will see for the research. So when we are talking about a Viksit Bharat 2047, we need to go back to that ancient Bharat model where the top 100 richest person cannot be an individual, cannot be a company, cannot be a state, cannot be a family. Then who should be the top 100 richest people be? These were the murtis of the Mandir in ancient Bharat. They were the top 100 richest list people. The murtis of the Bhagwan. Because all of these transactions need to be routed through the murti of the Bhagwan. If you don't want to face the consequences. Now, what happens in a world where individuals are the richest people, families are the richest people, or the state is the richest people? First, a vaccine will be discovered, and then a virus will spread. This is what will happen when the top 100 richest people are going to be individuals, companies, state, or families. So that is why it is very critical to get back to the ancient Bharat model and those banking principles. Now, just a little bit of concept of currency, just to show how the world order is changing. So first we had gold and silver coins in the world. Whenever the king thought that they want to demonetize, they would withdraw those coins and then issue cheaper metal coins. That is how they would accumulate wealth. And they would put the photos of kings and queens to make people realize that this is a currency. What happens next? Demonetized, going to a lower level. The more misbehavior in the world, the lower the valuation of the currency goes. Now it's paper. Now we want to make people trust this paper that this is a currency. So some governor, RBI, treasurer would sign it. And then you have to write something fancy at the top so that people trust that this is a currency. So they write, "In God we trust." And then what happens with the dollar of war? Why do I call it a dollar of war? Because you saw two buckets theory all across the world. Wherever Britain lost the colonies, they made partition into two buckets. One bucket of nations got dollars and arms. The neighbor got sanctioned. Both of them fight. And that is how dollar remained in the reserve currency status. So Europe standing at Russian borders, Russia standing at China borders, China standing at Indian borders, India standing at Pakistan borders, Pakistan standing at Afghanistan borders, Afghanistan standing at Iran borders, Iran standing at Iraq borders. Everywhere two buckets were created. Each of the nation was told that your neighbor is a rogue country. We are going to sanction them, which means you have to continue by default with the US dollar. That is how the dollar remained in the reserve currency status. Once they went through the Vietnam War, a lot of loss, and allies said that give back our gold, take back your dollars. President Nixon comes on screen 15th August 1971 and declares no more gold convertibility. Nobody will get their gold back. The currency becomes fiat. Fiat means printed out of thin air. And since rest of the world's currencies are linked to the US dollar, the entire currencies become fiat. What happens next? Two bucket theory again. Saudi Arabia, these Gulf countries are being told that we will secure you from the Iranian proxies. Two buckets again. One bucket gets sanctioned, the other gets dollars and arms. They both fight and dollar remains in the reserve currency status. 1979, Deng Xiaoping meets Carter and he's being told that if you want American technology, first finish off your consumption. He comes back to China, imposes a brutal single child policy. And then he gets the US technology to mass manufacture. Now what is this idea? The dollar's purchasing power will decide which country will be exploited, which country's natural resources will get finished, which cities are going to be polluted. They keep their climate clean, they use up your natural resources with the dollar's purchasing power. They buy your children, your meritorious student, take them over there, make them work, they pay tax, your child pay tax. From that tax, they take care of American parents. And your parents cannot even see you. This is what the dollar did. But then a turning point happens. The visa was rejected. The plan begins. He says that I'm going to line up Americans for visa over here. A plan is made, gift city created between Ahmedabad and Gandhinagar to de-dollarize the entire world. All of a sudden, Japan becomes a partner country for the state of Gujarat. Vibrant Gujarat summits happen, several versions, and the Gujarat model is ready and he becomes the prime minister. He becomes the prime minister. He comes with a gold monetization scheme because he believed that Indians have so much gold, we can de-dollarize. But what happens? Nobody gives their gold. So BRICS plus countries start accumulating physical gold and silver from the West. That's a part of de-dollarization process. He removes those currencies which were fake currencies printed by so many countries that they are running their economy by printing our fake currency. And then he comes up with UPI and RuPay UPI so that you can link the payment mechanism. I am paying right here from India in rupee. The other person will get in yuan and ruble real time without dollar required in between. So all the $4 hotspots to be reversed by 2030. Thank you.